So Bitcoin is at a pivotal crossroads right now. We're going to take a look at the Bitcoin chart, what I'm seeing, and where I think the next move might be. So basically, if we move to the daily chart here, we look at Bitcoin. First thing I want to do is basically draw a trend line off these highs. Got to use precision here. So got this red trend line now drawn right off the very top of the highs. And you can see how the same trend line has held price up. If we zoom in, we're on the daily here. You can see that when Bitcoin broke above, it basically tested multiple times as support, never had a close under that level until the actual breakdown where you can see it lost that level with momentum, had follow through, and that's when we really confirmed the downtrend. So we have now come up, we're trying to test that. We've tested a clear resistance, but it hasn't resulted in a clear rejection. Bitcoin over the last couple of weeks has been very hard to trade. And why I say that is, it's moved up a lot, but the moves have happened in a couple of days. So you've got, 2 or 3 days where it moves up and then it sits and does nothing for this kind of 7-8 day period. And then all of a sudden kind of breaks out of this range again. 1-2 days, the whole move happened. If you didn't catch that, you missed out. And now we're in that same position where we've been 8 days up here at this resistance. You've got, I think the market's kind of 50-50. You've got 50% of people shorting it, 50% of people prepared to long it. But I just don't feel you've got an edge while we're trading in this range. And that range that I'm talking about is kind of from, the support on the underside is about 93K. And then the resistance, is pretty much 95K. So it's like a 2.5K range. You can scalp inside this, but trying to actually play a breakout while we're inside this range is impossible. I don't think anybody has clear idea of the next move. I think from a trader's perspective, you probably got 3 options. Obviously lower or higher. Easy to say, but if you get a push up here, let's move to the 4-hour chart. If you get a push up above this range without good volume and momentum, you just be prepared that we're just sweeping this high and that it's just a deviation above the range high and that we end up coming back down. Maybe we test it again as resistance, and that's when we move lower. The areas I'm looking for, if that does go lower, is basically the first area is this 4-hour fair value gap right here. So, around the middle of that would tick price to, 90 to basically 88 is that fair value gap. So that's one possibility. Another possibility is, we don't take out this high, and we do just lose that level. If we do that with momentum, basically I would be expecting a move basically to the fair value gap, possibly up into this, what is now support, testing it as resistance, and then we might get a move lower. What we do have is this previous consolidation range where we were consolidating for 7 or 8 days, and that range would be the main area of interest for me, and that is sitting at 86.4 right down to 82.9. So those are the 2 bearish scenarios. I will cover the bullish scenario here in a second, but if we tick this double bottom low and we fib to see where the 50% level is. So this is the 50% level. I'll change that to red for you. I think that this 50% fib level is going to act as strong support. So this would be my area of interest to buy. So if I put the price on there for you all to see, we're looking at, almost bang on the 85K mark is an area of interest. I think that's where buyers step in, defend this area. So that would also be a nice, higher low for a continuation upwards to take out these highs. If this consolidation that we're currently in ends up being bullish, what you want to watch out for is basically on the break of this resistance is good momentum where, you do push up in pretty aggressively without any pullbacks into that 98K mark, which is the next key resistance. Maybe you get a retest then of this, what is now resistance. You retest it as support, and then you get a continuation up. Looking over at where we might find resistance, you basically struggled here. You had these three kind of tops. So we'll mark that off, and that's going to be at that 88.4. So I would like to see a move. If we break this resistance, I'm looking out for a move straight up into that area before we see a pullback, and then our continuation on. And I think this 102 area is also an area where we might run into resistance. So those are the two levels above that I'm looking for. And while we're trading in this range, I think that any one of these possibilities is possible. So you basically, you have to be patient, wait for the move to happen, the next move, whatever that is. And then when you get that move, you can then make your decision, and you've got more clear bias on the direction. So that is my thoughts on Bitcoin. If you're watching, I have started a new challenge where my goal is to turn $3,000 into one Bitcoin through trading. So the plan is to actively trade the $3,000, and with all of the profits that I make, I will be buying Bitcoin. I'll just be DCAing in, 50 to 75% of the profits at the time of making the profit. I will just directly buy Bitcoin. With the other 50 to 25%, I will keep it in reserve for when Bitcoin comes into an area of interest where I have some capital to unload into Bitcoin. So this started yesterday. I loaded up brand new Blowfin account with $3,000, and I did take the first trade. It was a spot trade. I'm going to split the $3,000 up into 60%, which is going to go towards spot. And then the other 40% I will actively day trade. Now, how I'm planning on working the spot is I'm going to be trading altcoins. I'm going to try my best to buy low, sell high. And I'm looking for 20, 30, 40% moves. That might only take, a week to 2 weeks to play out. So looking for high probability setups. I'm going to try and trade, the top 100. And last night took my first trade, and the coin that I decided to buy, it was on spot, is Move. So I'm going to kind of break down my thinking here. It doesn't look overly strong. The coin itself, the all-time high here is back at $1.21. It's had very aggressive sell-off. Basically got this trend line off these three highs. I do think that the market my bias is bullish overall. I think that we've put in our lows at this point. So I do think that this trend line gets broken relatively soon, and Move will have quite an explosive move. But looking at this kind of area here, this big sell-off we had recently, this sold off a lot more than most things. And this was due to an announcement of a token unlock. The token unlock is in the future, but you can see that the news, it was a sell the news event, and people that were holding this coin decided that they're going to sell it off before the unlock. From what I've seen in my time, trading, is by the time the unlock comes around, the downward effect or selling pressure has fully been priced in. So I think it's fully sold off at this point. It's currently priced at 24 cents. So the downside to this, I don't see it going to zero. It's got utility. It's basically a coding language that's used in SUI and some other layer ones. So there's utility there. I think, when things truly flip bullish, there's a lot of upside for move. So what I did was I basically just took my fib from the recent low to these recent highs and took my first entry on spot at 23.7. Was where I got in last night on this, 4-hour candle. It dropped down into this order block. So far, this order block has failed to see a close beneath. We also have another order block off this low candle. And that's kind of where I've got my DCA. So what I did was $800 order at this level, and I'm going to use $1,000 if we see this level. And I'm going to target 20 to 40% move. You can see that in this area here where we lost this support after testing it 1, 2, 3 times, lost it. There was virtually no price action happened in this area. We basically lost it. We fell right through, broke under this support, and then this yellow line has acted as a resistance. And we had one attempt to break, which we couldn't, came down, put in a higher low. Second attempt to break it, couldn't break it, came down, put in a new higher low. And then we've had recently a third attempt to break it. And so far we've put in a higher low. So I do think that this is when this resistance breaks, maybe on a 4th time breakout, we get a very quick little retest, and then you see an aggressive move higher, where we basically just fire through this previous price action. We might even come straight up, in a 1-day candle to test this 34 cent mark before then kind of fizzling out down into this support, tested as support, and then, move up from there. So that was the trade. That's the first trade of the new challenge that I wanted to go through with y'all. And that's pretty much it for today. We went through Bitcoin, my first trade on the Stacking Bitcoin challenge. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and make sure to hit subscribe to stay up to date with my journey on stacking 1 Bitcoin. See you in the next update.